The night settled slowly over the valley as the last light faded from the sky, and the air cooled around Abraham. He stood on the ridge with a heaviness that felt deeper than the darkness itself. The sand beneath his feet grew cold as he looked toward the distant plain where the cities rested. He sensed that something irreversible was drawing near, pressing against his spirit with a weight he could not ignore. The stars shimmered faintly above him as the stillness wrapped around him like a quiet veil. You know this kind of heaviness because you know what it feels like to carry a burden for others while feeling unseen. The ache of that loneliness is familiar in ways you rarely speak aloud. Abraham breathed slowly as he watched the horizon, feeling the tension of mercy and judgment rising like a tide within him. He knew he could not turn away from what was coming. His heart trembled with sorrow for the people in the valley. His spirit trembled with compassion for those unaware of the danger surrounding them. His soul trembled with the weight of standing alone in a place where few would ever stand. He whispered a quiet prayer into the night, and the sound felt fragile against the vastness of the darkness. The desert seemed to hold its breath as if creation itself understood the gravity of the moment. The silence wrapped around him like a cloak woven from sorrow and courage. He stood between what was and what would soon be, between the cries of the innocent and the choices of the guilty. You know this place because you have stood in the gap for people who do not see the danger they are walking toward. You have carried burdens others do not understand. You have loved people who do not see the storm forming around them. The weight of that love has settled into your own struggle in ways that feel both sacred and exhausting. Please like this video to help support more faith-building Bible episodes like this one. Application 1. The struggle. There are moments when you feel the pressure of carrying others in ways they will never recognize. There are moments when you sense danger approaching while everyone else continues living as if nothing is wrong. There are moments when you feel the loneliness of standing in a place where no one else is willing to stand. You move through your days surrounded by noise and movement, yet your heart feels like it is standing alone on a quiet ridge. This loneliness is real and heavy in ways that are difficult to explain. You carry the emotional weight of people you love. You carry the responsibility of being the one who prays when others forget. You carry the quiet burden of caring deeply even when no one notices the effort it takes. You show up with compassion when your heart feels tired. And you show up with patience when your spirit feels stretched. And you show up with strength when your soul feels thin because something inside you refuses to let others fall without a fight. You do this because you love, and you do this because you care. And you do this because your heart cannot ignore the needs of those around you. But the truth is simple. You feel alone. You feel like the one who sees danger others ignore. And you feel like the one who carries emotional weight others do not acknowledge. And you feel like the one who stands in the gap while others walk freely without understanding the cost of your quiet strength. This loneliness does not shout, it whispers. It follows you into the office where the glow of the screen reflects the tiredness in your eyes. And it follows you into the car where the silence feels heavier than the traffic around you. And it follows you into the night when your thoughts refuse to settle. You wonder if anyone sees the effort you give, and you wonder if anyone understands the pressure you carry. And you wonder if anyone notices the tears you hide. And these questions linger long after the world grows quiet. You ask yourself if you are doing enough, and you ask yourself if you are failing. And you ask yourself if you are the only one who feels this way. You have been strong for so long that you have forgotten how to rest. And you have been present for so many people that you have forgotten how to express your own needs. And you have been faithful in the shadows while others live freely in the light. But your loneliness is not a sign of weakness, and your loneliness is not a sign of failure. And your loneliness is not a sign that you are forgotten. Your loneliness is the echo of your compassion, and your loneliness is the evidence of your courage, and your loneliness is the quiet proof that you are standing in a sacred place. You are standing where few are willing to stand, and you are carrying what few are willing to carry, and you are loving in a way that few are willing to love, and this matters more than you know. Take 5 minutes today to acknowledge the weight you carry without judging yourself for it, and let this moment be a small act of honesty for your soul. If this is speaking to you, consider subscribing so you do not miss the next episode. Application 2. The shift. There comes a moment when the weight you carry begins to reshape the way you see yourself. And the heaviness you feel begins to whisper lies that do not belong to your story. And the loneliness you experience begins to convince you that you are standing in this place without support. You begin to believe that your strength is unnoticed, and you begin to believe that your compassion is unreturned. And you begin to believe that your quiet sacrifices are invisible to the world around you. These thoughts settle slowly and deeply until exhaustion becomes the lens through which you interpret your life. And emptiness becomes the lens through which you interpret your heart. And isolation becomes the lens through which you interpret your calling. But something shifts when you see your burden through a different light. And something changes when you realize that your loneliness is not the absence of God, but the place where His presence becomes clearer. And something awakens when you understand that the quiet space you stand in is not a punishment, but a sacred invitation. Abraham stood alone on the ridge as the valley slept. Yet he was not abandoned, and he stood in silence as the night deepened. Yet he was not unheard, and he stood with trembling courage as judgment approached. Yet he was not unsupported. His loneliness was not divine distance. It was divine nearness. You have been interpreting your struggle through the lens of your own emotions, but God sees the courage you do not recognize, and God sees the compassion you do not value, and God sees the quiet faithfulness you do not celebrate. You see your tears as weakness, but God sees them as intercession. You see your silence as emptiness, but God sees it as sacred space. You see your loneliness as abandonment, but God sees it as the place where He draws near. This is the shift, and it changes everything. When you begin to see your burden through God's sight, the weight does not disappear, but the meaning becomes clearer, and the purpose becomes deeper, and the loneliness becomes less frightening. You begin to understand that you are not standing in the gap because you are strong enough, but because you are chosen for compassion, and you are chosen for tenderness, and you are chosen for a kind of love that refuses to let others fall without a fight. This is not weakness. This is calling. This is sacred. You have carried the pressure of being the only one who cares, and the only one who prays, and the only one who stands in the quiet places where others do not go. But you are not the only one in this moment. God is standing with you, and God is listening with you, and God is moving with you, even when you cannot see it. And this truth begins to lift the weight from your chest. And this truth begins to soften the ache in your spirit. And this truth begins to restore your strength. Whisper a simple prayer that does not ask for strength, but acknowledges God's presence. And let this be the beginning of seeing your burden through His sight rather than your own. If you are finding this fascinating, consider subscribing so you do not miss more life-changing moments. Application 3. The breakthrough. There comes a moment when the quiet weight you carry begins to feel different, and the heaviness that once pressed against your chest begins to loosen, and the loneliness that once felt overwhelming begins to soften into something sacred. This moment does not arrive with noise or drama or sudden clarity. It arrives gently, like the slow rising of dawn after a long night. You begin to realize that the burden you carry has shaped you in ways you did not expect. And you begin to see that your compassion has grown deeper, and your patience has grown stronger, and your heart has grown wider because of the weight you have carried. You begin to understand that your tears have watered the ground of your own growth, and your prayers have strengthened the foundation of your soul, and your quiet sacrifices have built a resilience that cannot be shaken. And this realization changes the way you breathe. A quiet confidence begins to rise within you, and a gentle courage awakens in your spirit, and a sense of peace settles over the places where fear once lived. You begin to understand that you are not standing in the gap because you are alone, but because you are trusted, and you are capable, and you are held by a strength greater than your own. This is the breakthrough, the moment when your loneliness becomes a place of encounter rather than emptiness, and your burden becomes a place of purpose rather than pressure, and your tears become a place of healing rather than despair. Your heart begins to rest, and your spirit begins to breathe, and your soul begins to rise. You realize that the God who watched Abraham on the ridge is the same God who watches you in your quiet moments. And the God who stood with Abraham in the sacred silence is the same God who stands with you in your hidden struggles. And the God who honored Abraham's courage is the same God who honors your quiet faithfulness. You are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You are not unsupported. You are held. Hope begins to return, and strength begins to rise, and peace begins to settle into the places where fear once lived as you. Understand that your role as a gap stander is not a burden you carry alone, but a calling. You share with the God who walks beside you. This truth brings rest. This truth brings clarity. This truth brings peace. Speak one sentence of hope over yourself, and let it be a reminder that you are not standing alone, and let it be a declaration that your story is still unfolding in ways you cannot yet see. Do you have anything to add to the conversation? Please add your voice to the comments below. The closing prayer. Father, I lift before you the one who has listened to these words and the weight they have been carrying. And I ask that your presence become their rest and your nearness their strength. You know the burden they carry for others, and you know the compassion that shapes their choices, and you know the quiet strength that has held them together when they felt like falling apart, and you have never left them alone in these moments. Breathe peace into the places where fear has lived, and breathe rest into the places where exhaustion has settled, and breathe comfort into the places where loneliness has taken root. Wrap them in a presence that steadies their spirit and reassures their heart, and remind them that their tears have never fallen unnoticed, and remind them that their prayers have never risen unheard, and remind them that their compassion has never been wasted. Lift the weight from their shoulders and strengthen the places where they feel weak and restore the places where they feel empty. Let hope rise gently within them, and let courage awaken slowly within them. And let peace settle deeply within them as they feel the truth that they are not standing alone, but standing with you. Guide their steps in the days ahead, and guide their thoughts when the weight returns, and guide their heart when loneliness whispers again. And let your assurance settle into their spirit like a gentle sunrise after a long night. Bless them with moments of unexpected comfort, and bless them with reminders of your nearness. And bless them with the quiet confidence that they are walking with you even when the path feels uncertain. Let their heart rest in your faithfulness, and let their soul breathe in your goodness. And let their spirit rise in your strength. Amen. May peace rest upon you, and may hope rise within you, and may the presence of God walk beside you in every quiet moment of your journey.